Welcome to Unlocked. I'm Dr. Joel Swakowski. In this show, we explore how truth comes to life through real stories and real people. Today, I'm joined by my friend Tim Burke. He's a coach, he's a pastor, he's my friend. He has a huge heart for helping people and especially a passion for developing men into leaders. He's from the UK. He has an incredible story of transformation. So I'm excited for you all to hear his story and his stories. He's got a lot of great ones. So let's dive in. All right. Tim Burke here with me today. Man, it's so good to have you on. So you and I have known each other, what, a couple years now?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Just over 2 years.
I
Now
think
you're out
so.
there living in Dundee
Yes, I'm
in
originally
Scotland.
from Merseyside, mate, but yeah, I've moved my life up to Dundee in the last year. Moved up last June. Yeah.
Okay. For all my American audience, what does Merseyside mean?
Merseyside it's an area right near Liverpool where the Beatles are from. I don't know, I think a lot of people might know the Beatles, but yeah, that's where I'm originally from. It's in
Oh yeah.
England. So I'm now up in Scotland, yeah, in this new period of my life, yeah, and
All right.
enjoying things.
So if everybody's listening to your accent,
Yeah.
what they're going to connect with is, oh yeah, he does. He sounds like somebody doing a Beatles impersonation.
Yeah, he sounds like a Scouser, is what they might think. Yeah, they're like he doesn't sound like a Scot, and I'm not a Scot, but
Right.
like I'm in Scotland at the moment in sunny Dundee today. Yeah, it's not always sunny here, but yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
part of the world. Yeah,
And I know you weren't living in Dundee yet when you and I met. So I'd love to hear like what's the journey for Tim Burke going from Merseyside, Liverpool area to living in Dundee, Scotland.
are we looking for the short story, big picture one here?
Man, I just love the whatever however you want to get into it, man. It's like I know you have quite the story and
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'd love to just hear whatever.
Well, yeah, it all started, I'd say, this journey actually began about 4.5 years ago when the COVID pandemic started, and I was down on Merseyside then, and I was at a point in my life where I I was really I'd hit a brick wall in many ways, but in a lot of other ways, I thought I was doing life right, and at that point, I was like, you know, on my high horse, telling everybody what was going on about the COVID situation, and telling everybody that they were wrong and that they should be listening to me, and just constantly arguing with people in my life or isolating. It was one or the other at that point. And yeah, I was going downhill quick. I didn't realise it, but like that's what was happening. And then I'm ranting and raving to all these people around me about like I have got the truth on this situation. You need to listen to me. I'll tell you what's going on. And then I ended up meeting this woman who actually was one of the only people at the time who bothered listening to me and gave me the space to get a lot of the stuff out that was clogged up in my head that I didn't believe other people wanted to listen to. And then after listening to me, I started listening to her for a bit. I started giving her the chance to speak. And she started sharing with me that she'd met some guy who'd helped her figure out something about who she was. And I'd actually been looking into like who I was at that point. Like for a bit of context on that, I think about a year before COVID, I remember seeing a video by this guy called Bob Proctor, and it was like, "Who are you?" And
Okay.
he's having this interview with a guy, and he's like, most people get asked who they are, and they tell you what they do, or they tell you the name, or they tell you what kind of job they've got, how much money they make, and I'm like, wow, what's he going on about here? But it really hit me hard, and I was thinking, wow, what would my answer be to that question? But I didn't think about it much after that, but it definitely got into my brain. And then this woman started talking about like who you are to me. This is a woman called Dr. Ellie Harper. So we ended up becoming good mates, and
Yeah.
she told me about this in maybe October 2020. Excuse me. And again, I was stuck on my own track, so I was trying to get her to listen to me more than I was listening to her. And I eventually looked into the information she was talking about in December 2020. I done this little quiz that she gave me. Like, she'd mentioned there was this little quiz that helps you figure out who you are. And I'm like, oh, I'm not into any personality tests. And she's like, oh, it's not a personality test. It's this little quiz that gets you to think about what you feel. And I was like, oh, I don't really feel much. And she's like, really? Sounds like you've been sharing a lot of stuff that you're
Yeah.
feeling bad and angry about. And I was like, okay, I'll give you that. So I do this test or quiz, and it comes out with something that's known as me why and me how. They were called the intangible drivers. So why you do what you do and the effect you want to have on people and how you express that. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I come out as something called a saver teacher. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm going to need more than that. So she gave me a link to a couple of videos to watch where she said, this will give you more of an explanation about what your why is and your how. So again, I'm on my own track looking into all these different things related to COVID and didn't touch those videos for a couple of weeks. And then near the end of December, I'm at Ellie's and she's like, have you watched those videos yet? And I'm like, oh no. She's like, should we put them on now? So I was like, yeah, go for it. So we watched these two videos about what a saver why is and what a teacher how is. And whoa, like I was dumbstruck. I was like, how do these two guys
Yeah.
explaining things to me know more about me than I know? And to be honest, it was the first time I hadn't
Yeah.
spoke for about, a year. Like, I'd had periods of isolating, as I said, but I was dumbstruck. I just had to get off. I had to say, like, Ellie, I've got to go. And I got in and I ended up watching those videos back to back for about 3 hours that night. And I was like, that is a bit of me. Whoa, I am doing that now, but there's a there's parts of the video that show you how to do it in the right way and parts to do it in the wrong way. And I'm just stuck on the wrong track doing what I'm trying to do and being who I am. So anyway, the guy who had created this quiz is a man called John Lennart. So she's like, oh, John's also wrote this
Okay.
book. Come
Before
on.
before we get into John,
Yeah, okay.
I actually want to hear some stories here, Tim. I actually want to hear what was Tim Burke during COVID like. Like, give me an example of like what a conversation would have been like.
A conversation with Tim Burke would have been like, have you seen this thing on the news here where all the royal family and all the politicians are having a party together at Buckingham Palace, which is the royal family's place of residence? And my dad and my brother are like, yeah, what
Yeah.
about it? I'm like, all the staff have got masks on, and none of the other people have, none of the royals, none of the politicians. What do you think's going on here? And they would just not be wanting to
Yeah.
hear any of this. And I'm like, it's a complete contradiction, is what it is. This is nonsense. Or there was lockdowns at the time. So when you went out, you were expected to wear masks. You were expected to stay away from people. I wasn't doing any of that. I would just storm up to the front door of shops and I'd be like, out the way. And people would be like, you need to put a mask on. And I'd be like, don't be telling me what to do. I don't need to do anything. And I'd just be in the shop doing what I wanted to do, not caring about anyone else at all, completely on my own track, but totally justified in the actions, and absolutely beyond angry.
And also, how quick were you to tell other people what to do?
Oh, constantly, like the guy at the front door of the shop, for example, I'm like, out me way. Like I'm telling him what's what, but I'm not
Yeah.
having other people telling me what's what. So I didn't understand that contradiction I was in at the time. But again, I'd be in the shop and, someone would be picking some fruit up and I'd be going up to them and saying, oh, how do you know somebody hasn't picked that up before you? Could have COVID on that. Like, what do you think about that? And people were getting triggered left, right, and centre by me. And I was just like, wow, come on, think about it, use your heads. And I wasn't,
So just
again,
picking fights, huh?
picking fights left, right, and centre. Yeah, I'm wanting to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And yeah, I was quite happy to just get into it with strangers. Like one of my favourite stories wasn't at the time, but one of the stories that really got me angry at the time and triggered is I love golf. and we had these lockdowns, and people are like, "You can't go out," and I'm like, "I'm I'm doing what I want to do." So I headed up the first day
Yeah.
of lockdowns. I'm like, "I'm going to the park to play golf," and I had like 15 mates who like playing golf, but none of them had played. So I'm on the phone on the group chat, giving them a load of stick, telling them they're controlled, they're easy manipulated. You know, it was like going at them, trying to tell them they were wrong in what they were choosing to do. But one of the guys was like, "I'll come for the game. I don't really believe what's going on, but I don't believe I'm should be telling other people what to do." And I was like, "Oh, I think it's time to be telling people what to do." But anyway, me and him go to golf, and the first morning we're walking down one of the holes, and there's a guy filming us from the woods, and he starts shouting at us, "You're a disgrace. You shouldn't be out." And I'm totally triggered. And I'm like, "You're out yourself, you stupid so and
Yeah.
so." And he's like, I'm on my own now. And I'm like, "What's that got to do with anything? Are you going back in to be around your family?" And he's like, "This is going up on Facebook." And I'm like, "Do what you want, you soft so and so. I'll do what I want. You do what you want, but don't be telling me what to do." And he's like, kind of got off quickly because we're heading towards him then. And I'm angry and probably looked like I was going to punch him in the face. I had no intention of doing that, but I was ready to get in his face and give him some more. But he'd gone by that
Yeah.
point, and then I'm ranting to me mate, and me mate's like, it's done with now, innit? And I was like, "No, it's not done with. You know, that's going on daily. There's people telling me what to do left, right, and centre." And then I get in that morning, and my family come at me for going out. You know, telling me I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that, and putting people's lives in danger. Again, I've triggered, and I've just screamed at them about like the fact that they're getting controlled by other people, and that they're trying to tell me what to do, and I'll be telling you what's what. You know, so yeah, that's just a bit of what was going on in my life during COVID. And the other side of it was, if I wasn't around people, I was like, I'd smoked weed for maybe 20 odd years before that, but I'd never smoked more weed in my life as I had at that point. And I was isolating a lot. I was smoking weed. I was on my phone trying to get all these conspiracies and getting all this information in my own head so I could go and rant at other people about it and tell them where they were wrong. And, you know,
Well, like on social media and stuff.
oh yeah, on Instagram, on Facebook, on
Yeah.
YouTube, yeah, any
Okay.
videos I seen that were against the narrative I didn't like, I was using as weapons against other people. And just, you know, sending people stuff who weren't asking me to send them stuff, and again, you know, forcing my opinion on other people when I was absolutely hating that getting done to me at the time as well. So crazy time, but I wasn't aware of that at the time, as crazy as that sounds. It was like I just believed it was one way traffic.
So you're on this rampage of like righting the wrongs of the world.
Absolutely.
And it and this journey has never been more important than when there's a worldwide pandemic. Tim's going to save the world and make sure he sets everybody right.
Oh yeah, because
And it's Dr. Ellie Harper. So
yeah,
that's when Dr. Ellie Harper gets a hold of you.
yeah,
So that's kind of where we got. So like, so I think we got a nice idea of like what Tim Burke was like. And you can see like, okay, so from this quiz you took, I guess in late for people who aren't familiar, what I would say is you want to, you ultimately want to fill needs, right? You want to fix whatever's wrong.
yeah,
That's like what motivates you,
yeah,
right? And the way you do it is by explaining how to fix things.
absolutely, yeah,
Like
uh,
you,
yeah,
all right, so I can see like that those are good traits,
yeah. I agree.
right? Sounds like before you met Ellie, they were misdirected
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
maybe your own benefit and not for the benefit of others. So then you met Ellie and she introduced you to John, which John's a fan of the show. He's been on the show. So you can talk about John Lenhart. The audience knows who he is. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So now Ellie introduces you to John. Where are we at in the story now then?
So yeah, Ellie introduced me to John, and originally I didn't reach out to John because Ellie was sharing some stuff about John, where I don't know whether I could use the word vaccines on your show, Joel, but John had John had
Say
taken them.
whatever you want, man.
John had taken them, and Ellie shared that with me, and I was highly skeptical. of people who were taking the vaccines and
Yeah.
following the narrative. But I was like, this guy is giving me stuff and teaching me stuff that I believe was true. Like, you know, one of the first things I seen that he was giving to people was about communication. And I was like, oh my word, I'm communicating with other people in the same way they're communicating with me. Like I'm being really unhealthy and now I'm meeting other people, but I wasn't aware of it. But I didn't reach out to John immediately. Like what happened was John, whenever somebody opens a link to this book, he's got generativity. He'll fire you a message saying, "Hello, it's John. How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Hello, I'm Tim." Bang, and just spoke a load of garbage on this message to John about I'm a conspiracy theorist and I believe this and I believe that, blah 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 blah. Didn't ask any questions, just laid all this stuff on John, and John must have thought, I think this guy might need a little bit more time to, you know, find himself. So he gave me the option to reach out to him, but I didn't understand this at the time about myself. But I had really low self-esteem, and I actually felt really intimidated by John, even though I was like, whoa, this guy's got it wrong taking the vaccines. On the other side, I was like, whoa, this guy knows a ton of stuff I don't know. Like, this stuff's helping me
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite, yeah, I just wasn't at the point where I felt confident enough to reach out to him. But I kept asking Ellie questions about John, and it got to like May. This is from December to May, and Ellie was like, listen, John said if you want to know any more about what he's doing or who he is or what you want to know, reach out to him. Stop asking me and giving me thoughts about it. So I was like, right. So that gave me the kick up the backside to reach out to John. So I did, and then I started meeting John for a weekly call. And I've got to say, I believe
Okay,
John.
so when is this now?
This
So
is May
so it was
2021.
okay, so it took about 7, 8 months, it
Yeah,
ish.
from when I first met Ellie to when I met John, even though she'd mentioned him and what he had, it took me like 7 or 8 months to actually pluck up the courage to get on a call with him. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I did, it was like, whoa, this guy's awesome. Like he wasn't
Yeah.
like trying to prove me wrong. He was just trying to help me be more of who I am. And the first way he done that was to help me feel understood. Like I'm somebody, as you said, who wants to like help people understand by explaining things, and I couldn't really do that at that point. But this guy John was showing me how to do that for other people by meeting me that way. And then he asked me if I'd be interested in going through this course he had for men, because one of the things he wanted me to do was help Ellie
Yeah.
out. He was like, part of being a man is knowing how to help a woman. Um, he's sharing some of this
Yeah.
information with me, and I'm like, oh, I have done the opposite to help women for most of my life. Not an intentional thing, but I was always focused on saying what I wanted to say and speaking about what I wanted to speak about with women. Um, I didn't know
So
how.
what was at this point, what was, I guess, where were you at with like your journey with like the opposite sex, with like as like
Ooh.
where were you with women in general at this point in your life?
Okay, so at that point in my life, I was 39, and just for some context, I'm 43 now. But at that point, I'm 39. I'd been single since the age of 31 because the last woman I'd been in a relationship with, it was an absolute car crash, and the relationships had got worse and worse with women in an intimate sense. I could kind of like I think a lot of women who know me would say, "Oh, he's a nice guy. He's not a bad guy." But when it comes to like close, deep relationships, he just got worse and worse. And the last woman I'd been with, it was like that traumatic in many ways that like I decided in my own head, I am bailing out. I do not get women. I don't understand them. It's too much like hard work. So without ever telling anybody that, I just bailed out of trying to meet a woman. And I'd be getting stick off me mates like, "Are you gay? What's wrong with you? Just get out there and get with another woman. What's your issues?" And I couldn't explain it. I didn't have the words, but I was like, I just don't get women. It seems easier to get on with you guys than
And
it
that
does with
that's
a woman.
important to you. Right. So like you're a guy who really you crave understanding.
Ah,
So when you don't
100%.
understand something, and it sounds like you got to this like brick wall where it's like, not only do I not understand it, I have no hope that I ever will.
That's where I was at.
And
Yeah.
then this guy,
Oh,
John, who
yeah.
teaches you how to be a man,
Yeah.
is now challenging you to help him. Because John, when we're talking about this quiz, John's an administrator. What he likes to do is set other people up towards their goals, and he likes to
Yeah.
connect people to others, right?
Yeah.
Coordinating things.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. He would be drawn, hey, here's this mutual friend of ours.
Yeah.
How about I help you start helping her?
Yes. That's exactly
And
what happened.
so what's it feel like at this point, right? What's it feel like? You're at this point where it's like you've given up on women.
Yeah.
Did you start getting some of that hope back yet, or what was the
Oh,
initial feeling there?
yeah. The my initial feeling was like as I said, John was trying to understand me, and he asked me some great questions. And like one of the questions he asked me was like, "What are some of the things you want that you haven't got in life?" And like deep down, I wanted a woman. So he like helped me
Yeah.
share that, and then I start getting this information, and like my hope is growing quick because I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this stuff with women, so let's see what happens when I do. So he takes me through this
So it
man.
was pretty quick when
Oh, yeah, for me,
pretty quick you started realizing like, oh, the reason it hasn't been working is because I've been interacting with women wrong.
yeah. I was, uh, it was
So can you
funny.
tell? Yeah, I don't know if you were planning this. Tim, can you tell the story? I think you've told it. I think I've heard you tell it before. I don't know how to call it, but the story where you were I'll say this, the Brexit story.
Okay, yeah, where this is an example of
Okay,
what would,
but first, can you give a little context for the Americans who don't know what Brexit is? So
okay,
here, I'm
yeah,
giving you an opportunity. Give us a minute or two on what Brexit was, and
yeah.
then tell the story of this date you went on.
So Brexit was this political event that was going on in our country where, like you have the Democrats and the Republicans, we have Labour and the Conservatives, blue and white, whatever, blue and red, sorry. So one side wants to leave this European Union. So we had all this free trade going on with Europe, and there was not really many restrictions, and people could trade freely. And one side wanted us out of Europe, and both sides were given the different reasons for it, but it was actually a load of rubbish when it turned out. What everybody got the
Yeah,
truth about what was going on, but that's what was going on. It was a political disagreement. So I was on one side of it, and I get out on this date with this woman, and we go into a bar. We haven't spoke about Brexit at this point or what our political beliefs are, but I loved talking about all that kind of stuff. And we get into a bar, and there's no one in the bar. It was unbelievable. Like we're on a night out, completely empty, and there's only the barman and a couple of staff working away. So me and her go to the bar, get a drink, and the barman joins us for a drink because he's bored. And I bring up Brexit. I'm like, oh, what do you think? Are we staying in or are we out? What are you voting for? And they're both voting to get out because one side of getting out was like a lot of the propaganda through the news was we want to leave Europe because there's all these immigrants coming in. And I'm like, I believe people should be able to do what
okay.
they want. So like I'm on the side of like let's stay in and let's like keep connected and let people kind of like move about freely. Why would you want to put blockades up? This is like going backward. Bang. We're in this big argument. And next thing, I haven't even noticed this woman stopped talking. She's just gone quiet, and me and the barman are getting into it. And then he's like, "Oh, listen, I've got to go and sort some bits out. I'll be back." So he goes, and I turn round, and I'm looking
Because
at
he's
him.
working, right?
He's working, yeah, but there's no one to save, so he's
Yeah.
been able to get into it. But he's got to go and restock something or something. And I turn and look at her, and she's like looking the other way across the bar, like she wants to be anywhere else. And I'm like thinking, what's up with her? She was getting right into this a minute ago. And I'm like, what's up? And she's like, can you stop talking about that? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And in my head, I'm thinking, honestly, she couldn't handle it. She had her own opinion. She had a different one, and she
Yeah.
didn't like it. But lo and behold, there was a lot more to it than that. But that was kind of where I was at when I would go out with women. I would say to me mates, because they would give me stick, because I would bring up like conspiracy theories and politics to women when I got talking to them on a night out, and they would bail on me quickly. And my mates would be like, "You've got to play the game," and I'd be like, "What's this game you're on about? I'm just being me." So yeah, that was some context there
And
for you.
that's again, that's what it sounds like. It's like the I guess the intention behind it is something I still see in you today, Tim. It is I want to be who I am,
Absolutely.
which is amazing. But how you do that is as important as the intention behind it, right?
Yes.
And so now this is such a great story. We have a great picture of like here's a date with Tim before he learns how to really be a man.
Yeah.
It's he's gonna spout his political beliefs down your throat, and if you don't agree with them, you're the idiot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's quite the date there. But so what changed, and how did those interactions with Dr. Ellie go from the start? Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like do you mean before I met John or after I had this man coaching off John?
No, I mean now John, let's say John started mentoring
Yeah.
you a bit, and
Well,
how did things start changing for the better?
they started changing in a way where I used to hang out with Ellie quite a bit because like we'd connected massively over this information we'd both got. And I was now going round to hers
Yeah.
with me focus on how can I help Ellie share? How can I be about her benefits more? And another thing I was learning to do was talking stories, which is I was giving a lot of facts and stats to people, and I've since learned that like people love a story, but women especially. So I was just focused on like what are the questions I can ask Ellie to share on herself, and how can I help her just offload some of the stuff that's on her plate, and then start she'll be in a better place to actually want to listen to me then. But I kind of switched my focus to being more about the benefit of Ellie than myself, and I started being able to connect with Ellie and with other women outside of that because I worked in at the time for a company that owned a lot of properties and there was a lot of female tenants in the flats and so on. And I was practicing using this information on them, and I was like, this is going great. These women actually want to listen to me. And again, a lot of it was just me putting me focus on helping them share. But it started like growing me belief that like, oh, I can talk to women. This is simple. I'm just
So
I'm,
it was just a flip of like you have to give up control over your desire to be understood.
yeah,
Focus first on understanding someone else.
that was the key. Yeah.
Did this Wait, but you want to be understood. So what like this is where I'd love to hear like did this new approach of like focusing on what's best for these women and I imagine even your mates, your friends,
Yeah.
other guys too. Did that cause you to feel less yourself or more yourself?
More myself, absolutely. Because although I really want to be understood as a person, and that still stands true today. Like the more I was helping other people feel understood, the more other people were naturally like wanting to help me feel understood. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'd spent my whole life trying to force people to understand me. And when I gave up control, like the opposite happened and people started wanting to listen to me more. So I actually felt more understood than I ever had before. So it was quite unbelievable how that turnaround happened. Yeah.
That's great. It's counterintuitive, right? I think everybody thinks in order for me to have joy, to have happiness, I got to make sure I'm getting what I'm owed.
Yeah.
But really, we get all the things we want when we start learning how to serve others and love others well.
Absolutely. Yeah, the more I started
Yeah.
giving to other people in the areas I wanted stuff in, the more I started getting it back. And it's like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
the more I'm giving now, the more I'm getting back in my life. And that's not my reason for doing it, but it, as I said, I love to feel understood, and it's great when that happens as well. And it helped me understand as well that not everybody wants to be understood or wants to understand me. So it was good to know when to walk away from situations rather than get into the old habits of trying to force me understanding on people again. So yeah, it was the tools I was given just helped me in so many ways. But yeah, feeling understood for the first time, probably since I was a kid, really, was absolutely amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
life changing.
So what's Yeah, it is. And I mean, it's amazing. And it all started really with this idea of like letting other people be understood first
Yeah,
and being about their best interests. So you met Ellie, John mentored you.
yeah,
Now you're starting to help Ellie.
yeah.
Where'd the journey from there go?
Yeah, so the journey from there went towards like wanting to help other people more. Like that wasn't something I'd ever been focused on. So I switched me tactic in life to like trying to understand first rather than be understood. And as I said, there was a lot of people in my life, friends and family, who actually didn't want to get to know me really for who I am. But I started connecting with other people who did want to be understood and who did want to understand me. Um, like you were one of those people, and then but the first person I feel like I really connected with who was on the same track as me outside of Ellie and outside of John was a guy called Dean Wallace. So I started posting all this stuff online because I want to help people understand that's a bit of me. And I was like, oh, this information can help people. I am keen to get it out in any way I can, but without forcing it on people. So John helped me understand, oh, you can share stuff online. You can share on yourself, and people have got a choice whether they want to bother looking at it or not. And this guy, Dean Wallace, who's a Dundonian, he lives up in Scotland. He'd asked John, oh, who's this American guy sharing these posts? And John's like, he's not American. He lives down in Liverpool. He's over your side.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. A guy from Scotland heard you talk and thought you were American?
I hadn't spoke online yet. I was just doing
Ah,
wordy posts.
just doing
So
like oh, just doing like like text content, right?
yeah,
Nothing. All
nothing.
right. Okay.
I didn't have the self-esteem to get my face on screen at that point and talk about it.
All right.
But also, I don't know where that come from with Dean thinking I was American. But John was just like, "Oh, this guy's English. He's from near Liverpool. So, yeah, I think you two should hook up." So Dean reached out to me, and we jumped on a call, and like we just got on great, and we were talking about all this information we'd been given and how much he was helping us, and we decided that we wanted to connect more. And then Dean was actually, or always has been, someone who like wants to build communities. He just didn't understand that about himself, but he was doing this thing called Powerhouse, and he was like, "Oh, mate, I'd love you to come up to Dundee." And he'd also connected with Ellie as well, and he's like, "I'd love you two to come up, and if you wanted to, share some stuff at one of these Powerhouse communities." And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. Like, what's it all about? And he's like, oh, we're just going to try and share this information with people and see who wants it. And then, start growing a community of people who like want to grow in being who they are and want to connect with each other and help each other be more of who they are. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Because, like, I'm not getting that round where I live. And I was starting to hit a brick wall again because I was like, I got all this energy and I felt a big boost in life, but then I wasn't really meeting any people who I was connecting with who wanted to understand me or be deeply understood themselves. And I was like, this isn't doing it for me. So Dean has this first event, and me and Ellie come up, and it was just unbelievable. There's like, it was in a place called the Hampton Hotel in Dundee city centre, and he had like 60 odd people in a room. He had a few topics that we all got up and shared about, or a few people did anyway. And he asked me if I'd want to get up and share, and I was terrified because like I'd never spoke
Yeah.
in front of that many people before, not about something that I truly wanted to talk about anyway. And I got
Yeah.
up and spoke and done a bit of teaching, give some understanding, which is what I love doing. Yeah, it was just well received. The room was absolutely buzzing all night long, and Dean was like, "Right, I'm doing more of these. Are you in?" And I was like, "Count me in." So at that point, I was still living on Merseyside. So for the next year and a half or so, Dean was like putting on a few of these events, and me and Ellie would commute up, get to share, get to connect with all these people, and then I was starting again to feel like, oh, I kind of want this full time. Like, I need more of this in my life. And I was struggling to find a community of people around where I lived who wanted to do that. And I'm not just necessarily blaming other people. Like, Dean's got a skill of like attracting people that
Yeah.
I haven't got. I'm growing in my ability to like, you know, do what Dean does. But he's been a great help in me growing in that area as well and helping me do that more. And then things took a turn. Uh, Yeah,
Yeah, and it goes to show like how much, I mean, I love how your story goes from like you really isolating to
yeah,
learning pretty quickly how devastating that can be to your mental health. And then you find this leader, this small community of people that is expanding, and
yeah,
the thing they're connecting over is really helping people with their mental health and growing in self-esteem
yeah,
and growing closer as a community.
yeah.
So is that kind of what drew you to, well, screw this, I'm moving to Dundee,
Absolutely.
like be a part of this community?
Yeah. He, you
Yeah.
know, he, the, Dean and myself had ended up actually getting connected with God, which was something I'd never been connected with before. Like, I'd actually dismissed
Yeah.
God. I didn't believe in God, but I did have a belief for a long time that, like, nothing's random. There's some kind of intelligent design behind life. And I remember a guy years ago saying, "Oh, do you mean God?" And I was like, "Nah, not God," because I had this really negative view of the Bible. And I'd had a lot of like negative views from church from when I was a kid, and I didn't understand what I was getting taught back then. But me and Dean had connected with John, and John gave us some real understanding about God, the truth about God,
Yeah.
what we believe. He's got a book called Modeling God. He's got another one now called Modeling God's Wills, which is just expanding on this truth. And it got to a point where Dean was like, "Yeah, we're thinking maybe this community might become a church." I'm like, "Whoa, okay." So at this point, I'm thinking that's interesting. I could be a member of a church. And then there's another guy who was helping me out as well called Jonathan Fries. And we'd started talking more and connecting more. And he would ask me questions on calls just to help me share where I was at and state me will. And on one call, he was just like, "How would you feel about being a pastor?" And I just straight away was like, "Be amazing." And I was like, "Hang on,
Yeah. Oh man.
what? Yeah. Wow, where did that come from?" And he was like, "Just wondering." And then, unbeknownst to me, like he's speaking to Dean more, and Dean's like, "I really want to start a church." He's like, "This powerhouse community
Yeah.
stuff we were doing was actually teaching all these principles that God's given people to live a
Yeah.
good life, love, forgiveness, justice, mercy." And I'd spoke about these things without knowing they were from God and the Bible.
Where they came from.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was all going into my brain, and I believed it. And then I was like, "Right, okay, I believe that. I'm willing to understand more about this." And I got confronted about the fact that actually I didn't have a clue about the Bible because I'd never read it. I'd just, most of what I believed was second-hand accounts. But ultimately, Dean's like, "Listen, we're starting a church, and I believe Jonathan's asked you if you'd be a pastor, and you said, yeah. Do you want to come and be a pastor at the church we're starting?" And I was like, "Yeah." Wow, this is crazy. Like, my mind was blowing, but I didn't really feel at any point like I didn't have any doubt about doing it. I was just like, my head was spinning about like, what is going on here? But I desperately wanted to be a part of a community because, as you said, I'd got to a point in me early 30s where I just began to isolate more and more. And I thought that's what I needed. And little did I know that was just draining the life out of me. I crave connection. I'm like, I want to be around other
Yeah.
people. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get the chance to do that. And I'm going to get the chance to, give some understanding in church, which is a bit of who I am. So like, I was like, this is win-win. So the next step was like, right, looks like I'm going to have to move. Um, I'd
Yep.
never, I'd never lived away from Merseyside. I'd been living with my dad from the age of 25. So I was in the comfort zone. Life was easy, you know. I didn't have to worry about there being any toilet rolls in the house. I didn't have to worry about there being any food in the fridge, paying bills. I'd just give me dad some keep and he was sorting everything out. And I was still acting like a little kid in many ways, like a little boy. And then, but I was geared up to come. So I decided to make the move to Dundee in June of 2024. And originally, I couldn't get a flat. I was really struggling to get somewhere to live, and I'd been trying since about maybe early January 2024. And I'd spent 4 months online looking through stuff, applying for places, couldn't get anywhere. And then Dean was like, how would you feel about living with me mother-in-law? And I was like, oh, um, I'm not sure, but I want to get to Dundee quick.
Yep.
So he said, listen, you can, she'd love you to stay. Like I didn't know it at the time, really. And he said, I'll connect you, you can have a chat. And I ended up speaking to his mother-in-law, who's called Elaine. And she's an amazing woman. And she was like, listen, I'm happy to put you up for however long you need. So I moved up to Dundee in June, moved in with Elaine, carried on looking for a flat, but nothing happened until October of 2024. So I was with Elaine for like
Yeah.
5, 6 months, but she was amazing, put me up. Church had started in the February of 2024. So I was going to church every Sunday. I was part of book clubs in the week. Yourself and John ran an amazing Model and God book club that we all joined
Yeah.
just before church started, which I believe got everyone in the right place to start a church, or that core group who wanted to really start it. And then from there on in, yeah, I've just been growing in my role as a pastor and just loving getting to connect with people daily and weekly up in Dundee who actually want a community, who want to be more of who they are, want to help me be more of who I am, and really want to get the word of God out to people as well in Dundee because, like, like there's a lot of great people up here, but a lot of people who need help. And I believe the help they need is like the help God's given us. So we are just focused on trying to connect more people to God and connect more people to who they are. And yeah, hopefully change this city. And the dream is to see it change the country, change England, change Wales, change the world. But at the moment, we're focused
Yeah.
on trying to bring it to Dundee, and we're just growing that at the moment. Yeah, so that's about my story up to this point, mate.
I love it. I want to have you on again.
Oh,
I'd
absolutely
love to hear the arc of just like really the arc of the Relight Church journey you were on,
awesome.
because there's a lot of really cool stories of what happened over
Yeah.
like the last couple years. But before we end here, I know the big what's the big passion you have? I know the church, of course, is going to be like the heart of it, but like
Yeah.
what is like your passion, Tim?
My passion is after John took me through that man course, I I could just see how very few men we've got in the world, and I can see that like I don't believe men are intentionally acting like boys or acting destructive, but it's going on en masse, and I was like, whoa, my life was a shit show before I done this course. Really, like I did not know how to be a man. I want to give this information to other men, and it wasn't anything biblical that John took me through. It was all based on like how your mind and brain works, how to grow your self-esteem and who you are, and how to just be able to shift your focus to give more rather than taking more. And when you do that, you're actually going to get more in life. And I am just hell bent on wanting to give this information to other men. So since that man course, I've been focusing on posting online and on social media all this information more about men and like how men can help themselves, how men can help other people, and how we can actually change the narrative between men and women. Because there's so many problems between men and women in our world, and I know from experience the ones I had, and I know a lot of other men who were struggling in that area as well. And I'm like, I can give them what they need. You know, I can give them the understanding, and they can go and live it, and we can change the world. So that's my passion. So I've been pumping out this information, and then I've got help off people who were like encouraging me to try and, you know, make a business of it, not to make money, but like, how can you attract men who actually want this, and how are you gonna do that? Like, just posting information doesn't seem to be working for you, does it? So I'm kind of focusing now on this course that I've built that I want to share. You helped me build, and it's got everything that men need to go and be men, everything they need to go and be the man, the unique man they are, and everything to go and help the world be a better place. And I'm like, my focus is on getting men to come towards me so I can give them this stuff and they can go and apply it and live it out. And yeah, we can make this world a better place. And that's a passion I feel like I'm growing in daily. Yeah,
And it's a passion the world needs. I think you said it. So many of the problems happen between men and women,
yeah,
and the information you're teaching helps that. And we also learn that a lot of, like, the majority of the issues between men and women are because men are acting like boys, and women have to
yeah,
make up for that gap.
yeah.
So keep up the great work, man. And I know it's a 10 lesson, like, seriously, in 10 lessons,
10 weeks.
what your course can do is take 10, yeah, 10 weeks. What your
Yeah.
course can do is turn someone who's meant to be a man, actually help him become a man to the point where he could help other people become men.
Oh yeah,
Like, that's how powerful this is.
yeah, it's got everything in it you need. That's how long it took me to just like take it and like go and live it myself. John didn't have to keep teaching me stuff. He's like, you got everything you need now to go and be an example to men, to go and help other men. And I truly believe if men step up and start acting like men, like women will follow. Like as you say, women are having to
Yeah.
deal with all these little boys running around, and if we could just change the narrative, I think men are gonna notice like, ah, actually women aren't the problem. I'm not saying there isn't women getting stuff wrong, but I believe the main cause is men acting like boys, and it's like, come on, men, let's step up and change this situation for everyone. Yeah,
Yes. Thank you for what you're doing. I can't wait to see this coaching program take off more. You're already helping a lot of people, and I can't wait to
yeah.
see it happen more. But Tim, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me,
And
mate.
there's so much more to unpack with your story. I definitely want you on again.
Oh, mate,
So,
I'm buzzing
yeah,
to come on again. Yeah, I'd love to come on again, mate. Yeah.
yeah, great. You have such great stories, and yeah, a powerful story yourself as well. So, thank you so much. And yeah, man, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, sir. I shall see you soon. Cheers, man.
All right. Big thank you to Tim Burke, the coach, the pastor, the man. Time to dig into some of the details, the deeper themes of his story. So, right off the bat, he started talking about this quiz he took that helped him determine who he is. So, I want to pitch a little flow cess for you. It's a company that really exists to help people intentionally become happy. So, this quiz that Tim was talking about, call it the ID quiz, or intangible driver. And he referenced how he doesn't like taking personality tests, and how his friend, my friend, our friend, Dr. Ellie Harper, helped him see the ID quiz is not the same as a personality test. So the word personality actually comes from the word persona, which means mask. So what we wear in front of who we really are, right? Now, every personality test determines the mask you hide behind in certain circumstances, whether that is at work or at home, etc., different contexts, right? Now, while that information can make an immediate difference, You might have to act a certain way at home. You may have to act a certain way at work. That can help you in the moment. It will never help you achieve long-term happiness. It will never help you achieve confidence in who you are or self-esteem. It will never help you achieve your purpose in life. The only way to achieve those things is to embrace your unique self. And that uniqueness within you is something that never changes. Now, the company Flowcess, can find it right at flowcess.com. They call who you are your intangible driver. Now, I've talked about this in previous episodes. This is who you are in your soul. So this is the being that God created within you when you were in your mother's womb. Flowcess has a take on this, that they help people in business, in athletics, in education, etc. And that was Tim Burke's journey. He found it through Flowcess. So check out flowcess.com if you want to find out who you are. Now, another piece of Tim's, I love when he tells these stories of how he behaved during COVID and how angry he was and how he was so quick to prove other people wrong. Can you see how this is really just a misdirected version of who he is? He wants to teach people, he wants to help, but how it came out was so flawed. One of the things that Tim grew in, and it wasn't expressly mentioned in his story, but you could see it throughout the transformation, was him embracing what I would call contrastive thinking. It's one of the 4 principles of modeletics that's covered in Modeling God. Contrastive thinking is the ability to consider the opposite perspective. Another way of saying that is the ability to consider you could be wrong. So when Tim talks about this story of meeting John Lenhart and how he was really quick to be skeptical of John because of John's take on the vaccine or vaccines in general, that was an area in Tim that would have benefited at that time for him to be contrastive on himself, for him to be able to consider the opposite perspective. If Tim really believed that taking the vaccines was wrong, for his own mental health, there's a benefit to him being able to argue for how vaccines could be a benefit. He doesn't have to believe they're a benefit, but can he argue that it's possible? Can he give you one reason why they could be a benefit? And notice, not only would that have helped Tim's own mental health, but it would have helped him be able to connect with John in a way where they could have had a conversation earlier than what they ended up having. Tim had to go through some other hardships before he was, in a good enough spot to actually interact with John. And then what he shares, is once he starts actually interacting with John as a human, they get along great. John's teaching him a bunch of stuff, and John's helping him become the man Tim always wanted to be, and the man who could teach people things that would actually benefit them long term. Another part of Tim's story that's incredible is his journey from isolation to community. He was a big isolator. And I know what that's like too. I was too. Some of us people who have the proclivity to teach, our brains often work in such a manner where we're constantly analyzing things. And it can get mentally exhausting. A lot of us like that. And that's where I can connect with Tim in this area, is we think the best move then when we're mentally exhausted is to isolate. Like isolation will be the key to us getting energy. But that's wrong. That's a flawed mentality. Isolation doesn't give energy. Isolation leads to death. Isolation will never give you more energy. The only benefit isolation can ever give to you is when you're removing yourself from a destructive context. So it can remove a detriment from happening to you for the short term. But long term, you'll never gain anything from isolation. You'll never benefit from getting more energy. That's one of these flaws. A lot of people think, oh, I need to get refreshed, so I'm going to go be by myself. You're not getting refreshed. That's not giving you more energy. Tim learns that, and he learns it so much that now, just a few years later, after him having major isolation issues, I talk to Tim frequently. We talk a few times a week. And there's days where like if he's at work and not interacting with people a lot, he'll tell me. He's like, "Yeah, today was a rough day. I didn't get to talk to people much." And he's learning, and he has learned that so much of his mental, spiritual, emotional health and even physical well-being comes down to how much and how deeply he's able to connect with other people. And now he's learned how to do that in a way where connecting with others isn't just for his benefit, but as a benefit to the people he's connecting with. He's learned how to do that in a way where everybody walks away from the interaction, where edified, right? Built up in their thought process. Which leads me to my final point I want to make is in two parts. One is our growth always leads to God. If a person is really growing, it will always lead to God. God is the first cause. He is the arbiter, the creator of truth. Truth, all truth belongs to God. And if we're growing, that means we are adhering more and more to the truth. Now, some people, it might take longer than others to get to that conclusion that I just made. But if you're growing, you will eventually run into a situation where you have to determine, is God going to be part of your life? And a person with a growth mindset, when they also have the non-contradictory answer for who God is, it always leads to God. Now, I could also say the same thing about mental health. As we improve our mental health, improving our mental health also will always lead to God. Because truth, again, is the lifeblood of a mental, emotional, and spiritual life. Truth is the key attribute to us having a healthier thought process. And again, I can make that same conclusion. All truth belongs to God. So that's why not only is it important for us to understand truth, for us to be able to embrace it in our lives, but it's also important for us to have the non-contradictory answer for the first cause, for who God is and for how he works in this world. So big thanks to Tim for, talking about John's book, Modeling God and Modeling God's Wills, which, as you know by now, I was able to work with John and add commentary to those editions. So where are you starting, though, is a question I like to ask people. Because although I could say growth always leads to God and improving your mental health always leads to God, we don't all start the journey in the same place. So one of the things we like to do when we're helping people in the community I'm a part of, the communities, is we ask people, which direction do you want to go? Do you want to learn who you are, or do you want to learn who God is? And we can take you either way. And inevitably, either one of those will eventually lead to the other. So, for instance, I can help you determine who you are. I can help you grow in your self-esteem in that area. And eventually the conversation will inevitably lead to, where did this uniqueness you have come from? Right? Then we enter into God. Now, if you want to start with the who is God route, great. We don't have to talk about who you are yet. Let's talk about God. Let's make sense of the world. Let's make sense of how we all came to be. Let's make sense of how things operate in the cultures we all live in. And that conversation inevitably gets to, though, is yes, I can believe in God, but if I don't understand who I am who I am uniquely, I don't know how to operate in the world that God created. So we don't really care which way you want to start, because we know eventually you're going to get the whole spectrum if you're a person with a growth mindset. So that's it for today on Unlocked. Big thank you to Tim Burke for being on the show. I'm Dr. Joel Swakowski. If you want to find Tim, and especially if you're somebody who wants to look into his coaching program for men, or you know somebody who should look into it, check him out on Instagram. His handle is at Coaching by Burke. And yeah, look up Tim there. He'd be happy to help you out. And I'll tell you, his coaching program is priced well below what it's worth. We're talking about life-changing information in just 10 weeks. If you're interested in your intangible driver from Flowsys, go to flowsys.com, and there's the quiz right on their website. You can do it right there for free. Thank you for listening. Keep seeking truth and keep living it out. See you next time.